In 200 yards, at Wagoners roundabout, take the second exit onto the Parkway, A312.
That's because, as I say, we don't know when the next general election is going to be. We don't know what the main policy platforms will be of major parties. And we don't know what state the country is going to be in at that point in time. We don't know what the sort of dividing issues will be and how that will be reflected in the manifestos of any of the parties. So it probably shouldn't be that surprising to listeners to think that, without knowing, who's going to be running various political parties and what their main campaigning issue is going to be, it's very hard to say what we might be doing at some point in the future. The reality is that the Liberal Democrats have just achieved a huge win in Tiverton and Honiton. We've heard people talking about the fact that this Brexit deal isn't working, especially for farmers and for small businesses, and these are the issues that we want to be campaigning on right here, right now.
And that by-election took place because there has been a split inside the Conservative Party. Tonight there's yet another one, and therefore presumably the possibility of another by-election. What do you think about the fact the Prime Minister clearly knew at least something about Chris Pincher's behaviour or reputation in the past, and nonetheless appointed him Deputy Chief Whip?
I think it's truly shocking, and I think, the Prime Minister, I believe, lost the trust of the British public.
Exit the roundabout onto the Parkway. Continue on the Parkway for 1 mile.
People talk about there being problem in the Westminster culture with this. Have you, as a relatively new MP, seen any of this? Do you acknowledge there is a problem deep inside the institution?
So, largely speaking, I haven't experienced it myself, but I am very clearly aware that other people have, and there clearly is an issue. There are problems, I think, particularly with younger staff members and the power dynamic with MPs in some places, that whistleblowers often feel like they're not trusted, and the reports they give are not going to be acted on. We certainly saw that in the case of the whistleblowers who reported Neil Parish, and I think people worry about this power dynamic that exists. So clearly there has to be some reform, and I think there needs to be better vetting of within political parties.
Well, you said better vetting. Very interesting. There's a conversation coming up later in the programme with Michael Crick, who makes the very good point that we have right across the country what he calls the secret or hidden elections, which are the selections of party candidates in seats where it's pretty clear they're then going to become MPs and therefore one day perhaps ministers and whips and all the rest of it. And these happen well away from the public. They go on taking local newspapers to report them. Don't you think it's more should start with much more open local selection procedures so that local people, local journalists and everybody can scrutinise the candidates and perhaps weed out any people who might be problematic later in their careers?
Well, I think we've had a huge number of improvements to our own internal selection processes over the last few years, and certainly the entire process advertised on our website. We have a competency-based assessment process.
In a quarter of a mile, at Cranford Parkway interchange, take the second exit onto the M4 slip road to Heathrow Airport, M25.
All right, thank you very, very much for coming in and talking to me. Much appreciated. Now, coming up later in the programme, I'm going to be telling you more about what I call Britain's hidden elections and why we should know more about them. And also the Minister for Brexit Opportunities, Jacob Rees-Mogg, is here to cast his eye for the latest plan to make Brexit work. The time now is 6:31 and Amelia Cox is here with your headlines.
At least one person has died in a gas explosion in Bedford, with police warning there may be more casualties. The blast caused the roof of a block of flats to collapse earlier. Police are dealing with a shooting at a 4th of July parade in a suburb of Chicago. The reports of loss of life and other independent...
Exit the roundabout onto the slip road.
...have been cancelled. And a fellow international train...
In a quarter of a mile, merge onto M4.
...would not rejoin the EU or single market. Speaking on Tonight with Andrew Marr, Nick Thomas Simon says Sir Keir Starmer will lay out a clear plan for Brexit in a speech tonight. LBC weather, a few spots of light rain for central and northwestern areas tonight. Drier elsewhere, lows of 8 degrees.
LBC. Hello, Britain. Albert Einstein here. Smart meters are helping people all over the country manage their household budgets. They show how much energy you're using and what it's costing you daily, weekly, and monthly. So, for example, my neighbor Josh might learn he takes too long in the shower, which could even help him reduce how much energy he's using.
For extra help managing your household...
Continue on M4 for 3 miles.
Today, consumer action required. Energy systems and eligibility may vary. Clinical research is looking for participants with painful osteoarthritis to take part trials assessing new medicines, aiming to reduce pain, increase mobility, and improve quality of life. If you have osteoarthritis of the knee and experience pain frequently during the day, you might be suitable for a clinical trial. Get access to expert medical care and get involved in cutting-edge research. Sign up now at stpancrasclinicalresearch.com. Jacob Rees-Mogg. Welcome, Mr. Rees-Mogg. Can I just read to you something that Keir Starmer has said in a speech that he's just making at the moment? He says, under Labour, Britain will not go back into the EU. We will not be joining the single market. We will not be joining a customs union. I know some people don't want to hear that, but it's my job to be frank and honest. Under Labour, that simply will not happen. Do you accept that?
Well, Sadiq Khan has immediately contradicted him and says that he thinks that that is a mistake. So there's a clear division in the government.
Keir is the leader.
Currently, yes, that's accurate. But he's in part of his own departure, so whatever there's an argument. And I'm fascinated by what he's about to say in reports about it. He's leaked his speech, as far as one can tell himself, quite widely. And what he wants to do, by and large, is things either Conservatives do. So he wants to change the law now in protocols. I hear full supporters of the bill. And he wants recognition of qualifications, which we've already legislated. So give one that he was not asleep last year.
These are fairly small-scale changes in the overall picture of things, and they go a long, long way short of Labour actually wanting to go back into the single market.
In a quarter of a mile, keep right to stay on M4.
The Labour Party wants to reverse Brexit. Is fair or accurate?
Well, I think all that Sir Keir is going to be saying later on today is that he wants to do what the Conservatives are doing but half cocked. So it's not much of an announcement by him today. And the question is, you wonder whether you can believe it from a man who voted...
Keep right to stay on M4.
And who was desperate for a second referendum, and who was willing...
He was still, that's all history, that's gone.
Well, the history's quite important. Yeah, but history's quite important, because great history, England, so you know what history is. He wanted to support Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister because he's believed so strongly in the European project that was the only justification you can find for him supporting a leader who he now tries to dissociate himself from as much as
Do you think it's possible that people like that looked at the result of the referendum, thought deeply, heard it, listened, and have changed their minds?
So for 3 years after the referendum, he was trying to reverse the result. So you're saying that he ignored the first vote, but he accepted the second. That's possible. It doesn't seem very credible. I think this is essentially smoke and mirrors. The Lib Dems, who would be his favourite coalition partners, are certainly not in this position.
Trevor Kavanagh, the Sun's veteran columnist, who I quoted at the top of the show, argues that the Conservatives are in danger of Labour under Lib Dems winning the next election, forming a coalition, changing the voting system to lock you guys out for every generation, reversing Brexit. And the way things are going, that's where you're heading.
As it happens, I respect him a huge one. I mean, he's a friend of mine who writes brilliantly delivering on Brexit. We are taking steps that allow people to lead their own lives with less pettifogging bureaucratic interference. That we are getting the benefits, the fruits of Brexit, as we already have, and there are more to come. Rather than saying, well,
In a quarter of a mile, keep right to stay on
I
M4.
do think we now have constitutionally an evolving referendum doctrine, and it would be taking the constitution back to make a major change without asking the British people.
There would have to be a referendum. You talk about the opportunities of Brexit.
Keep right to stay on
I
M4.
think it's going badly. The government has not delivered well. That might be because so many exporting businesses in particular sit at their desks.
Continue on M4 for 4 miles.
New bureaucracy, forms to fill in, and it's causing a lot of grief and a lot of pain. And perhaps also because so many people trying to get to Europe watch, the European line of queues going straight forward. The British passports go slowly, and it just feels for an awful lot of ordinary folk incredibly frustrating.
Well, first of all, I would quibble on this concept of ordinary. I don't think anybody is ordinary, and I think it's very bad practice to accuse people of being ordinary.
I think ordinary is quite good.
No, I
see anything wrong with ordinary.
don't think it is. I think everybody's exception. It's due to politicians and journalists to find what their exception is.
That's a little politically correct, but there we are.
Well, it's the first time I've been accused by that. Now, you're all people. I was pretty confident. But to come to your main point, yes, trade with the EU from the UK is more difficult because the EU has decided to erect barriers that are arguably on contravention of the WTO. That does not allow for non-tariff barriers to be used in place of tariff barriers. We haven't done that. We have maintained an open economy. We didn't impose more controls on the 1st of July to keep prices down for consumers, to put them first. But can I come to...
I'm sorry, putting the blame game to one side, the effect of Brexit, of which you're a huge supporter, has been to raise barriers. Whoever's to blame for them. I'm saying a lot of businesses look at those barriers, a lot of people, ordinary or special, whatever, look at the queues going in and out of Europe and think this is just miserable.
We have taken control of our borders, so we now decide who comes in here. That seems to me to be a pretty important gain from Brexit that people wanted. We don't have to take any person from the EU who wishes to come. And I think in terms of people's concerns economically, these are headwinds faced across the world. Inflation is running across the world. Germany, I think, has higher food price inflation than the UK does. We've had some queues at Heathrow. Amsterdam, Schiphol's had worse queues. They closed a motorway in Sweden because people
One
weren't
of our
going to the
motorways has
airport.
been closed tonight.
By protesters, yes, I'm aware of that. The M4 road I know extremely well. But this is important. The government is tackling a global economic problem. It is an inflationary problem and it is a supply chain problem. Supply chains are not working across global economies, and this is to do with lack of Chinese semiconductors and cities in China still being closed. It's to do with shipping being in the wrong place.
But it's all, I'm sorry,
There's
it's also...
very little to do with Brexit.
Oh, you say it's very little to do. Let me ask you this.
In 2 miles, at junction 6, take the A355 exit to Slough Central.
Decreased or stayed the same as a result of Brexit?
We're opening up trade deals with the rest of the world. So
Which is it?
But I'm telling you that we are looking to Australia and
Because
New
the
Zealand.
honest answer is increased, hasn't it?
The EU doesn't want our goods. I mean, this is a matter for the EU. The EU...
It's kind of a big matter for us too, if we're
The
trying to
EU
sell
wishes to harm its own consumers, but we're looking at the broader global markets. So we're reducing red tape in relation to other countries. And that's really important. We could get a trade deal with India by the end of this year.
Well, let's hope we do. But
that is more than 1 billion people. That's a really fantastic opportunity, which we couldn't do in the EU because the EU was too slow and sclerotic to get its act together in negotiating.
So, meantime, we can agree that bureaucracy in terms of exports to the EU has increased. And if you look at the results of that, the OBR, which is the government's own body, your people,
and it's not our people, it's independent.
Well, I know, but you set it up. They're all your lot, basically.
Well, yes, I say the BBC's our lot.
The OBR
set up by government.
Well, exactly so. Exactly so. The OBR has stuck to its forecast that productivity in GDP is going to be 4% lower than it would be if we had stayed in the EU.
When did the OBR ever get a forecast right in its whole history?
Well, they get a lot of things right.
They haven't got a single forecast right.
So
they're a very interesting idea.
They're a waste of money in that case. You should abolish them.
That's a very interesting idea.
Are you in favour of it?
It's a matter for the Chancellor. But the ABR's got every forecast wrong. Every single one. It has not managed to forecast what will happen in the following year from one budget to the next. So you do have to wonder whether its forecast should be taken as holy writ.
Maybe you don't like them because you don't like the forecast they're making at the moment. They say that
In a quarter of a mile, at junction 6, take the A355 exit to Slough Central.
No, maybe it'll be 32, maybe it'll be 41, but it's an awful lot of money.
I think it's absolute nonsense. I think the ABR is simply wrong because I don't think it takes into account the opportunities that you get from supply side reforms, from things like the vaccine. The vaccine came in earlier in the UK. That led to...
Exit at junction 6.
That was worth billions. Where's that in the ABR's forecast? Not there. We can reduce trade barriers as we have done on other countries. Where's that in the ABR?
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the third exit onto Tons Lane,
I was
A355.
talking this morning about developments in AI. AI could be one of the biggest industry winners over the next decades. And we're able to go ahead because we're not in the EU. What does the ABR have to say about that? Nothing. So
There's lots of coulds and perhaps and let's hope so.
there always are in forecasts.
Why has
Just as much in the ABRs as there may be in mine.
Why has the pound fallen so much?
Well, the pound has fallen, as has the euro, against the dollar.
But we've fallen against the euro as
A
well.
little, but not that much, actually. Our relationship to the euro has fallen slightly, but against the dollar, you would expect this. In a time of economic uncertainty, people tend to put money in the dollar, particularly with rising interest rates, because you can get a better interest rate on your dollar savings than on your sterling savings. So people move money there, and this tends to happen in all periods of
You
economic
don't think it's
uncertainty.
uncertainty, particularly inside the British economy, a trade war with Europe as a result of Northern Ireland
No,
protocols?
I don't think it's that. I think, considering the global economic circumstance and a war going on in Ukraine, it'd be very surprising.
Exit the roundabout onto Tons Lane.
Was it appropriate for the Prime Minister to appoint a man who had such a record of inappropriate sexual advances to be Deputy Chief Whip of the Conservative Party in charge of the welfare of Conservative MPs?
Record? What is this record?
Well, there was a 20...
In a quarter of a mile, slight left towards Sippenham Lane.
Incident which both parties discussed in public, so there was a record. And the Prime...
He was never found guilty of any wrongdoing.
In a court, not, but he resigned.
Nor was he found guilty.
He
Nor was he
resigned as a
found guilty. Nor was he found guilty by an inquiry.
If this was all just hearsay and ridiculousness, why did the Prime Minister describe him as Pincher by name and Pincher by nature?
Do you think people should be judged by rumour?
It depends how strong, persistent the rumours are. It's not a question of just being judged, it's a question of being put into an appointment.
Slight left towards Sippenham Lane.
Of the welfare of other people.
He was appointed as a minister by Theresa May.
But he was appointed as Chief Whip.
He was deputy
Chief Whip by Boris Johnson.
That you cannot hold rumour against people. There are rumours in politics against all sorts of people. There are not rumours about all sorts of people who then turn to be the ones who leave Parliament abruptly. You cannot judge on rumour. That is fundamentally unjust. Would you do that?
In principle, perhaps, but this is a case where, story after story after story. There was so much there.
Continue for 1.5 miles.
Is it not?
There were rumours. I think Prime Ministers have to be just. They can't just say, I've heard a bit of gossip, and I think you've done something that I wouldn't approve of. I mean,
They could ask, couldn't they?
what are they supposed to ask? I mean, the propriety in ethics
Is there anything
propriety in ethics did get asked about the appointment of Mr. Pincher earlier this year, and that seems a perfectly reasonable step to take.
So,
but
like to appoint him?
You can't judge people on rumours. It's fundamentally unjust. That there are rumours about all sorts of people that turn out never to come to anything. There are also stories that emerge.
Did you hear this nickname, Pincher by name, Pincher by nature?
That was not a nickname that I had heard, but then I may not be the best source of gossip.
So you think this was an appropriate appointment?
I think you should not judge people on rumour, but that once things come to light, it is quite proper that they are investigated. That's why when I was Leader of the House, I was involved in the ICGS. So there is a proper complaints procedure that looks after people who have been affected by this, people who may have been subject to harassment or bullying or improper practices in an employment relationship or in a parliamentary relationship. That process is, in my view, too slow, but it is there to give confidence to people that they can make complaints against people in positions of authority. And I want to see that process work. I think it's the best process that we've got.
Given that Neil Parish had to stand down as an MP, surely the same is true of Chris Pritchard.
But you see, Neil is an example, but I've never heard any rumours about Neil ever doing anything wrong. He seemed to me to be a fundamentally decent person, and I still think that, actually. I mean, I think what he did was appalling, but it doesn't make him an evil man.
But coming back to my question, if he went for that, shouldn't Chris Pincher go for this?
That was a matter for Neil to take, that whether somebody resigns his or her seat is something that they can't be forced to do by the whips. The whips, I'm glad to say, do not fire members of parliament. I have to say I might have been fired for completely different reasons if that had been a power of the whips.
Talking of the whips, you know that the 1922 committee, the elections are coming on, there's a suggestion that they're going to change the rules for another challenge to the Prime Minister and all the rest of it. Do you think people engaged in that kind of behaviour should have the whip withdrawn?
People must do within the 1922 committee what they feel is the right thing to do. I would be very surprised if the whip were withdrawn for people
simply plotting. You'd all be gone then.
Well, other than me, of course.
Sure.
But I think that the withdrawal of the whip is for a scandal or for voting against the government in the House of Commons. It's not because somebody prefers Boris Johnson to, for example, Theresa May, which was my position prior to the leadership change.
Jacob Rees-Mogg, thanks very much for coming in and talking to me. Coming up, I'm going to be joined by a man who has chased more politicians than any other journalist in the business. He's got his own idea for getting a better standard of political class, which would clean up Westminster in the process. This is LBC, and the time now is 6:50.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Rachel Johnson.
Record high fuel prices are causing protests around the country, so forget 5p here and there. It's time to slash fuel duty to get the country moving again.
Rachel Johnson on LBC.
Tax credits are ending, and the Department for Work and Pensions will be moving people across to Universal Credit by 2024. Search Understanding Universal Credit to find out more. Eligibility criteria apply.
Right now, foreign travel looks even more unpredictable than ever. Whether you're dreaming of a sun-soaked or just a short city break, wherever you're going, begin your trip today with a visit to GoCompare. Travel insurance is too important to leave to the last minute. T's and C's at GoCompare.